It's Freedom Fighter Radio coming to you live from the heart of the Great White North, the heart of the true North. Strong and free. It's Tuesday night, March 28th, 2023. I'm your host, Ordinary Joe. Our special guest tonight will be John Carpay, the founder and president of JCCF. Been looking forward to this awesome episode that we are going to have. So, folks on the audience member, shout out to Ricardo and everybody else that will be tuning in. We have a little problem with our Rumble. We are not. I'll fix that on the first break. But folks, share because our Rumble is a little problematic and the cross post is not working as well. But we are on Freedom Fighter Radio. We are on Odyssey. Rumble will be fixed on the first break. Our guest tonight is John Carpay, the founder and the president of JCCF. JCCF, as you know, during the Emergency Act inquiry, is front and center of the legal defense for all of our wonderful Freedom Convoy truckers in Ottawa. So without much further ado, let's get this show started right now.
Freedom Fighter Radio, what is up? Whoa!
Shout out to Freedom Fighter Radio. And Joe, you're doing great work, brother, and I love it. All right,
always. Make sure you listen to the Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Show.
I'm on Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Joe Show. That's quite a mouthful.
Yes.
Hey guys, this is Chris Sky. Listen to Freedom Fighter Radio. They're here today, back in the blue, and so am I.
Please consider supporting the OJTV production costs and be an insider member for only $3 a month. Go to patreon.com/OJTV Canada. Thank you for your continued support.
Canadians all across the country are sick and tired of the lies, the fear-mongering, and the hate speech they hear from the mainstream media. Download the free radio app, Freedom Fighter Radio. Click the link below, scan our QR code, join our mailing list, and get a free download of our Freedom Fighter Radio app only here on OJTV on the Ordinary Joe Show.
Just because it's a seller's market, it does not mean that it's not a good time for you, the buyer, to get into your dream home. The seller's market presents a unique opportunity not available during the buyer's market. Find out for yourself. Get the professional advice of an experienced, honest, Christian freedom-loving real estate professional. Call my friend, our sister in the fight for freedom, Madam Cheryl Severance of Century 21 at 905-646-2121, or check out her website at cheryl-severance.c21.ca.
Fund the truth, fund the unacceptable fringe views of the Freedom Fighter Radio broadcast. Go to patreon.com/OJTV Canada and also donate $3 per month and help us keep going and pushing back against the lies, the hate, and the fear-mongering of the legacy media. Patreon.com/OJTV Canada. Your $3 per month will help us set fire on the lies of the tyrants, the technocrats, and the internationalist social engineers. Patreon.com/OJTV Canada.
Did you hear about the children's cough syrup shelf? They are mostly empty in the drugstores. Are you concerned? Do you feel the need to stockpile? As the world heads towards uncertainty, with every nation meeting its own challenges, Larks Medical are staged and ready to respond. Go to larksmedical.com. Provide them with your name, phone number, and email, and Larks will respond at their earliest possible availability to find solutions and ensure ample supply for your needs. Or email them directly at info@larksmedical.com. That's info@larksmedical.com.
I'm Pastor Arthur from Calgary, the leader of the Independence Party of Alberta. You are listening to the Freedom Fighter Radio Worldwide podcast, only here on the Ordinary Joe Show. Immediately out! Immediately go out and don't come back.
Welcome back, folks. It's Freedom Fighter Radio, coast to coast to coast. Welcome to all of our Freedom Fighter Radio app listeners on the Freedom Radio app. Welcome to Rumble. Welcome to Odyssey, our listeners on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. On the second break, folks, we are going to cut off from social media and we are going to stay exclusively on our free speech platforms. Those are Rumble, Odyssey, and the radio app. So right now, if you're listening through social media such as Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, may I recommend that you start looking for our link, which was posted on the main page of the People's Radio and the Freedom Fighter Radio Canada podcast Facebook page. You'll find our link to Rumble and Odyssey over there, or download our Freedom Fighter Radio app at www.ojtv.ca and listen 24/7 on Freedom Podcasting. Folks, without much further ado, John Carpay was born in the Netherlands and grew up in British Columbia. He earned his BA, or Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, at Laval University in Quebec City, and his LLB from the University of Calgary. Fluent in English, French, and Dutch, John served the Canadian Taxpayers Federation as Alberta Director for 2001 to 2005, advocating for lower taxes, less waste, and accountable government. Called to the bar in 1999, he has been an advocate for freedom and the rule of law in constitutional cases across Canada. As the founder of and president of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom, or JCCF, John has devoted his legal career to defending constitutional freedoms through litigation and education. He considers it a privilege to advocate for courageous and principled clients who take great risk and make tremendous personal sacrifices by resisting the unjust demands of intolerant government authorities. In 2010, John received the Pyramid Award for Ideas and Public Policy in recognition of his work in constitutional advocacy and his success in building up and managing a nonprofit organization defending citizens' freedoms. Ladies and gentlemen of the Freedom Fighter Radio, let's welcome in Mr. John Carpay. Hello, Mr. John Carpay. Welcome to the Freedom Fighter Radio Canada, coast to coast. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm glad to be with you, Joe. I'm doing well. How are you?
Awesome. I like the level of your audio. I'm just gonna last time we had you on, you're a little soft, so now I'm gonna balance it out so that we are pretty equal. But Mr. Carpay, been looking forward to this conversation. Everybody knows JCCF as the advocates, the lawyers who were defending the Freedom Convoy leaders, the truckers, during the Emergency Act inquiry. And at that particular inquiry, Keith Wilson was most visible, and Eva Tripuik. We were not able to see you more visible during the inquiry, but you are the one who founded and started the JCCF. I'd like to start from the very beginning. What is the motivation? When did you start, and why did you start JCCF? And what does that exactly mean? Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom. When people hear this, by the way, I want to emphasize the Freedom Fighter Radio. Our motivation here is to simplify all of these wonderful concepts for the ordinary Jane and Joe Canadians. So today I'll talk to you like, your your buddy from the gym, or an ordinary Joe and a constitutional lawyer walking to the bar. That's you and me. That's our podcast today. Thank you for joining us. Please tell us about JCCF and how it got started.
I've always had a strong love for individual freedom. I believe in the dignity of every human being, and I think that government is necessary, for certain things. So we have a police force to provide protection. So we have enforcement of a criminal code so that we can be safe from murderers and thieves and rapists. And there's definitely a role for government. I'm not an anarchist. However, government can also, if it is not properly restrained into its proper channels, can become a source of great evil. In the 20th century, there were more people murdered by their own government than the total number of people that died in wars. So when you look at the purges of Stalin in the Soviet Union, when you look at the Hitler and the National Socialists in Germany, and the people that the millions that they murdered in Germany and all over Europe, when you look at Mao Zedong in China, Pol Pot in Cambodia, and even on a smaller scale, if governments are not properly restrained, they are incredibly dangerous. They can be. So I've always been an advocate for the free society, which is the maximum freedom for the individual, and a limited government that is properly restrained to doing things that only government can do, or that government can do well that we cannot do. For example, running an independent court system is not something you or I could do as a private entity. So with that love for freedom, 12 years ago in 2010, I founded the Justice Center to be a voice for freedom in Canada's courtrooms. And since that time, we've been advocating for the freedoms of expression and conscience, religion, association, peaceful assembly. And then more recently, the last 3 years with lockdowns, the Justice Center was the first organization in Canada, the first registered charity in Canada to oppose lockdowns. And we said these rules are not scientific, and the violation of our charter rights and freedoms is not justified. And we were the first registered charity in Canada to publicly call for an end to lockdowns. That was in May of 2020, when we were 2 months into this big, evil, unscientific experiment. We called for an end to lockdowns.
Awesome. Thank you for that, John. And I have a video here that I want to show all our audience. I got it queued up, but it got disconnected. So let me just attach it again. So I'm just discovering actually today, because I initially had different sets of questions, but the Freedom Fighter Radio and Ordinary Joe brand, a lot of my audience know that I am not ashamed in professing that I am a freedom podcaster, but I'm also a Christian faithful podcaster. I have both a freedom podcast and a Christian podcast. And I discovered that you were almost regular at Faithing TV. And so I have the early days. Okay. I'll do that a little later, because I just lost my folder here. I'll bring it up a little later. But I noticed that, so Faithing have been visiting my church when we were young adults at Toronto City Church. She was a very strong advocate, youth leader in the Christian world. And now she has her own TV show for the last 10 years, I think. And you've been on that TV show many times. And some of your early cases that you have shared with Faithing are some of these sort of like assault against our religious rights in schools. Tell 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 us about some of the early, and this has been happening, and you have been advocating for constitutional freedoms. You've been advocating for freedom even before the lockdowns. So I'm pretty impressed with JCCF and your dedication on fighting for regular, ordinary Jane and Joe Canadians. Uh, Tell us a little bit about those early cases that you and JCCF advocated for.
Well, quite early on, I had the honor and the privilege of acting for students at the University of Calgary who were threatened with expulsion from the university simply for having peacefully expressed their opinions on campus. These were pro-life students. They were speaking out against abortion. The Justice Center has no position on abortion, but we do have a position on free speech. We're in favor of free speech for everybody. And the university was saying to the students that if you express your views peacefully on campus by putting up a pro-life display, we will find you guilty of non-academic misconduct with a possible penalty of expulsion from the university. Now, these students were very, very courageous, and they risked their entire future, their university degree, their future ability to earn an income. They risked everything, and they put up their pro-life display anyway. They were found guilty by the university of non-academic misconduct, and they were not expelled, but they were issued a warning. But we took that to court. We sued the University of Calgary, and we secured a court ruling against the university, with the court saying that the university was not behaving reasonably by punishing the students for simply expressing their views on campus. So that was one good victory for campus free speech against the university. A few years later, the University of Alberta in Edmonton, they tried a different censorship method. They said to a group of pro-life students, they said, look, you can express your views on campus. That's fine. We're all in favor of free speech. All you have to do is pay us a tiny little security fee of $17,500, and then we'll allow you to set up your display on campus. So it's kind of a censorship through the back door. So we sued the University of Alberta, and we were successful there as well in the Alberta Court of Appeal. We had a great victory for parental rights in a case. You may have heard of this one, the Easter Bunny case in Hamilton, Ontario. There are some foster parents who had accepted into their care vulnerable 4-year-old and 6-year-old girls who could not live in their home environment. They needed the care of foster parents. And so they were caring for these girls. Everything was going very well until the social worker started to ask the parents, we got Easter coming up. Have you told the girls about the Easter Bunny? And the parents said, well, no, that's contrary to our Christian beliefs. We're not going to lie to the children and say that there's an enormous, gigantic rabbit that comes around and delivers eggs. We do plan to have an Easter egg hunt, but we're going to tell the girls that it was, mom and dad who hid the eggs, and we're not going to talk to them about the Easter Bunny. Very sadly, the social worker kept on insisting on it. When are you going to tell the girls about the Easter Bunny? And the parents kept on saying no. And then the Hamilton Children's Aid Society actually removed these girls from the care of these parents only because the parents said, we're not going to tell them about the Easter Bunny. So the Justice Center we took the Hamilton Children's Aid Society to court, and we secured a court ruling that government agencies are not allowed to discriminate against parents on the basis of religious belief. So that was a victory for religious freedom. So we've had lots of success over the years in defending the free speech rights of students on campus. We've had many, many out-of-court settlements. For example, 2 years ago, there was a student at the University of Winnipeg who was peacefully demonstrating outdoors against the lockdowns. And there was a photo on social media of this student being part of this peaceful outdoor rally. She got a threatening letter from her university, basically suspending her, telling her she was going to be suspended from taking her courses because she had peacefully taken part in an outdoor protest. And so we wrote a stern demand letter to the university, and then the university backed down, and they said, okay, we're not going to suspend the student. So we get a lot of good results without needing to go to court.
I found the video I want to share with you, and I didn't want to.
Because that's where a lot of the drama is right now. Now, the provincial government.
Let me rewind it from the very beginning. It just jumps in.
So let's talk about private schools then, because that's where a lot of the drama is right now. Now, the provincial government is doing something there. Talk about that. Bring our viewers up to speed.
Well, quite a lot's been going on with the mandatory. There's a law that requires Christian schools, Jewish schools, Muslim schools, Catholic schools, all schools in Alberta must set up gay straight alliances, or GSA, if one student asks for it. And that, of course, is of concern because the GSA is not just a peer support group, but it's a club that has a particular view on sexuality and marriage and gender that it's promoting. And there's more and more evidence coming out now how these clubs really are encouraging kids to transition to the opposite gender, encouraging kids to withhold secrets from parents. The law was made even worse by a provision that makes it illegal for teachers and principals in Alberta to tell parents about their own children's involvement in GSAs and GSA-related activities. For children as young as 5 years old, it's illegal for teachers and principals to inform parents about what's going on with their own kids. That is the law in Alberta today.
Wow, that's crazy. So this was a 2018 episode with Faitine. I don't know if Faitine still remembered me, but she used to be very good friends with my pastor. But this particular, what do you call that again? Straight gay alliance?
Gay Straight Alliance, GSA.
GSA, Gay Straight Alliance. So you created JCCF, you said, in 2010. This was 8 years later, but two questions. Let's talk about GSA, if it's still around. But before we get into that question, I want to ask you, in 2010, have you kind of sensed that all of these human rights and, un-Canadian wokeism and un-Canadian propaganda and agenda was about to happen in our country? That's why you formed the 2010, or what was the main motivation for you forming the JCCF in 2010? Did you kind of see this already, writing on the wall on these things?
Yeah, quite often, freedom is lost month by month, year by year, decade by decade. There's a slow, gradual erosion. And so that was definitely visible. By 2010, for example, the campus free speech situation was very bad. At campuses, at universities all across Canada, we had situations where at that time it was only the pro-life groups that were getting censored, nobody else. And I warned, I said in 2010, and in the years prior to that, I said, if we condone and tolerate the shutting down of the pro-life viewpoint on campus, just because it's unpopular and people don't want to hear it, people find it upsetting. So if we allow universities to censor that one viewpoint, it's going to spread. And so we have seen that cancel culture now. It's become all pervasive. It's not only pro-life groups that are shut down and censored and prevented from speaking, prevented from setting up a display. But you have situations, you see how Jordan Peterson has been shouted down at McMaster University in Hamilton and other places. We see a National Post columnist, Christy Blatchford, may she rest in peace. She passed away in 2020, but she was shouted down from a stage. Just last month in February of 2023, we had Dr. Francis Widdowson was coming to the University of Lethbridge to talk about cancel culture and the danger of wokeism, the threat to academic integrity and the threat to freedom with this aggressive woke ideology. That was her speaking topic. And her point was completely validated because she was shut down at the University of Lethbridge by students, chanting and screaming and singing and beating drums, and made it impossible for the event to go ahead, which was approved by the university president. University president thanked the students who had effectively shut down her event. So the problems were very evident already in 2010 when the Justice Center was just getting off the ground. And things have gotten worse for freedom in the last 12, 13 years.
And I noticed also that there's a lot of your early cases also involves with defending religious rights for parents and for the Christian faith, and pushing this anti-Christian agenda. And that when you were doing that in your in the early days of the JCCF, was that because there are more cases like that, or you have an affinity to the faith that you want to protect the exercise of the faith?
Religious freedom is a crucial protection for all people, including atheists and agnostics. It protects all of society. The totalitarian regimes, whether it is National Socialist Germany under Hitler, whether it's Communist China under Mao, or Communist China today, or whether it's the Soviet Union under Stalin, whether it's some Latin American regime, and any regime in the world, whether it's the theocracy, the Islamic fundamentalist theocratic government of Iran. It doesn't matter what brand of repressive government, but the dictators who seek to oppress the people, they hate religion, because when citizens, whether they're Christian or, Orthodox practicing Jew or practicing Muslim, practicing Buddhist, Hindu, whatever, when people are practicing a religion, they do not submit to government as the highest authority. They have this attitude. The attitude is, yes, I respect the authorities up to a point. There's laws. You can't murder. You can't steal. You can't drive while you're impaired by alcohol. There's all kinds of, and generally the religious people are law respecting, but ultimately their loyalty is to God. So when the state demands worship of the state, then the religious people are an obstacle to what the totalitarians want. And so, Adolf Hitler in Germany, even though he's most well known for his persecution and murder of Jews, he also persecuted the Christian churches. Yes. And, the Soviet Union burned churches, destroyed churches, threw priests in prison. The communist regime in China today is persecuting Christians. So the Justice Center itself is not affiliated with any religion or any faith. We are secular, but we defend religious freedom because it is so important to preserving the free society for everybody.
Well, so I was kind of wondering about you personally, Mr. Carpay or John, if it's all right to ask you, do you have an affinity? You have a religious affinity to Christianity, or this is just because of your constitutional calling?
Well, I think you're the first person to ask me that question, and I will answer. But generally, I don't. I am Christian, but I generally don't talk about that because my focus is to defend charter freedoms for all people, and the Justice Center is a defender of rights and freedoms for everybody. We're not a Christian organization. We're not affiliated with any church. But, since you asked me about myself personally, then I've answered that.
And thank you for answering that, because my follow-up question is, what are your thoughts on Canada having most pastors arrested more than the entire history of China's heavy-handed dictatorial powers over their citizen? But don't go away. We'll be right back after these short messages. We still have Mr. John Carpay, the president of JCCF and founder of JCCF for another half hour. Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
Imagine that the power grid was totally wiped by an EMP weapon of an enemy state. Your stress level will go to the roof, your patience will be tried, you will have to think about both your own and your complaining children's survival. If you don't survive, your children won't when they are left on their own. Teach your children how to have the mentality of being survivors through a fun, children-friendly guided outdoor adventures with basic survivor mindfulness integrated in the fun outing activity. Call my friends Ornell and Victoria who are experienced survivors. Call them at 905-252-8009 or email them at northernpacificcottages@gmail.com.
Hello, friends. I am Derek Sloan, the leader of the Ontario Party. You are listening to the Freedom Fighter Radio Canada podcast, only here on The Ordinary Joe Show.
Welcome back, folks. It's Freedom Fighter Radio. Our special guest is John Carpay. And what I found out with JCCF, they defended a lot of people in the faith community, especially the Christian community, who are being, our religious rights are being assaulted and undermined by all of these woke agenda. So my follow-up question with Mr. Carpay, John, what do you think of the fact that Canada has arrested more Christian pastors more than the entire history of China's dictatorial history?
Well, that's the first time I've heard that statistic. I know that in Alberta, we have Pastor James Coates and Pastor Art Pavlovsky and Pastor Tim Stevens were arrested and jailed. That was 3 pastors. In other provinces, to my knowledge, pastors did not spend time in jail. I think there was one pastor in Manitoba who spent a day or 2 in jail. But generally, we did not have large numbers of pastors being jailed. But we did definitely have what I would say religious persecution. In British Columbia, they shut down the government shut down the houses of worship. So the churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, houses of worship were shut down for 5 months, while at the same time, 6 people who do not live in the same household together, 6 people could meet together at a restaurant and enjoy a meal together at a table. People could go to the liquor stores, the marijuana stores, the big box stores, the Walmart, the superstore. People could go to the gym. So there were some restrictions outside of churches, but they were capacity limits. And so we had these churches in BC that said, look, we will comply with the mask wearing, with the social distancing, with the capacity limits, with the hand sanitizer. We're willing to comply, and we would like to have the same rights and freedoms that are enjoyed by restaurants and gyms and stores. And still, Dr. Bonnie Henry, the chief medical officer in British Columbia, refused and shut down churches for and all houses of worship for 5 months. So that's blatant anti-religious bigotry on the part of the chief medical officer. There's no scientific basis for that. There's no rational basis. It's pure bigotry. And so this is one of the things the Justice Center is, has been fighting against. And so we've had court cases in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, across Canada.
There's a new pastor also got arrested recently. I think I can't remember.
Derek Reimer in Calgary,
because of speaking out at a drag queen story time event, I think.
I don't know too much about the details of that case. My understanding is that for the drag queen and the reading, that those people had rented and paid for a private room within the library. And that the pastor went in there to disrupt their event with his protests, and he was forced out of the room. I'm not sure of the details, but I think the drag queen reading to stories is very sad. I think it's a very poor choice that some parents are making. But at the same time, if you respect parental rights, there has to be some degree of tolerance for parents to make decisions that you think are not right. And so yeah, the drag queen storytime reading is it's a difficult and challenging issue from that standpoint if you are a respecter of parental rights.
That's right. From the legal perspective, I can appreciate here in Ontario. Well, before I shift to Pastor Henry Hildebrandt, we know that Pastor James Coates' church was also fenced off, and Pastor Henry Hildebrandt's church here were threatened. Well, were locked. Were locked at one point, and they were also having their worship in the winter in a tent outside of their paid for facility, and they got fined for more than $100,000, I believe. But also, if we can step back a little bit with this drag queen story time, we know that a lot of the children that are being brought, in my understanding, many of them are same-sex couple who adopt kids. And so I don't know, now it's legal, I think, in North America to be doing that. But from a human perspective, if we kind of put the legalities on the side, that feels like a blatant grooming of the next generation of sexualizing children. Is there no criminality that can be used against these practices, in your opinion?
Well, it's an interesting question because it's my understanding is that it's a criminal code offense to expose children to pornography. You're not allowed to do that. And yet we have situations, we have had in the past situations where a gay-straight alliance is indoctrinating children into the transgender ideology and is teaching kids that it is very simple and easy and natural to that it's possible to transition over to the opposite gender, and that this is very easy thing to do, and that it's possible. And so that is a particular ideology. So we fought in court against Bill 24, which was an Alberta law that made it illegal for teachers or principals to inform parents about what is going on with their own children. So one of the affidavits in our court case was from a girl who was 14 at the time, and she was autistic, and a lot of autistic girls are kind of tomboyish. They tend to, have stereotypically masculine behaviors and attitudes. And so this girl was taught by her gay-straight alliance that she was probably a boy trapped inside a girl's body. She was encouraged to start using a boy's name, dressing like a boy. And she was told that, she would be able to start taking puberty blockers and then start taking testosterone and eventually get her surgery, that she could just become a boy. And this was withheld from her parents. What the school and what the Gay-Straight Alliance was teaching to this girl, the parents were completely kept in the dark. And this has become so prevalent now all over Canada that the schools are indoctrinating children into transgender ideology, and the parents are being treated as though the parents are the enemy.
Yeah.
And that's not right, because even though there are some bad parents, I think we know that, some parents are they're abusive or they neglect their children, but just because there's a few bad parents,
they blanket all of us as, all the parents are being blanketed or being put into the same net that we are all bad, and they're the good ones.
And with that too, there are, most teachers are really good people, but there are some bad teachers who will sexually abuse children if they have an opportunity to do so.
Right.
And so this whole legislation is based on this very twisted viewpoint that 100% of parents are bad and 100% of teachers are good. And so teachers can be fully trusted and parents should not be trusted at all. And that's just not reality. The fact is, most parents are good, most teachers are good. There's a few bad parents, there's a few bad teachers, and you don't predicate the law on this false notion that parents are evil and teachers are 100% good.
It's amazing. I just want to check what it's 6:15 in Ontario. You are 2 hours early. You said that you're about an hour, but it looks like I only have 15 minutes of you left, or
Yeah, roughly. Yeah, 15, 20 minutes is great.
Oh, okay, perfect. So before we go on the last break, I want to ask you about the GSA to help ordinary James and Joe understand GSA. Is that a policy? Is that an organization? And why is that legal? GSA is it's a in your interview with Faytine, you said that it's part of the rule is not to tell parents about this. And how can they get away with that? Not telling parents about this grooming.
Well, for 2 or 3 years in Alberta, that was the law. The Justice Center took that secrecy law to court. And what ended up happening was we had an election in April of 2019, so almost 4 years ago. And Jason Kenney and the United Conservative Party won that election. And they had made a pledge before the election that they would scrap the secrecy provisions. And they followed through on their promise. And they did scrap the legislation that made it illegal for teachers and principals to inform parents about what's going on with their own children at school. Now, they would never.
Is it scrap already? Is it scrap already in Alberta?
The secrecy provisions are scrapped in Alberta, and that would never have happened if the Justice Center had not sued previously and started a court action. We were the tip of the spear. And we put up with a lot of name calling and abuse and a lot of hatred. And people said false things like, well, you hate gay people and you hate children that are same-sex attracted. Just a lot of name calling. We were prepared to put up with that. We knew that would happen. So we created the space with our court action that made it possible later on for a new government to repeal that particular law.
That's well. I wonder. So that became law. So did it go through legislation and it was the Secrecy Act, and it was actually voted in to become a law in Alberta?
Yes. It was the law. That was the law in Alberta for 2 or 3 years under the NDP, and then the United Conservative Party, after getting power in 2019, they scrapped that particular law. However, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We still have a law on the books in Alberta that every school in Alberta has to set up a gay-straight alliance the moment that one child asks for a gay-straight alliance, which is a blatant interference in the local decision-making and the autonomy of every school. It also violates the religious freedom of parents and of school communities to teach what they believe to be true about gender and sexuality, because if you're required to set up a gay-straight alliance, you're required to set up a club that is espousing values that are contradictory to what many religious Christian, Jewish, Sikh, and Muslim schools are teaching.
And I feel that this is early signs of deteriorating or collapsing our society. I think many of these unreasonable, from my perspective, some people probably find that to be reasonable, and I can not understand why, but I feel that most of these agenda are coming from the outside. These are not homegrown. We know that this is happening in the United States, it's happening in Europe. So this is a movement, an agenda from some think tank, some centralized organization or movement pushing this on all of our children. This is let's talk more about this. Folks, don't go away. We'll be right back after these short messages.
A disturbing news. Doctors administer certain drugs even after the family have rejected it. Why? Because hospitals can charge $3,000 a pop for it. Meanwhile, they hid the fact that cheaper alternatives are available and it only costs cents. Do you know if you are paying the right price for your current prescription? Have you researched if there are cheaper yet equally effective alternatives? Call Shinlaza Pharmaceuticals at 1-800-206-0051 or email at info@shinlaza.com for a free consultation. Shinlaza Pharmaceuticals is owned and operated by a freedom fighter of the Freedom Community in Ontario.
Hello, friends. I am Derek Sloan, the leader of the Ontario Party. You are listening to the Freedom Fighter Radio Canada podcast, only here on The Ordinary Joe Show.
I believe the time is right for an international treaty or other legally binding instrument to provide the framework for a more coherent and coordinated response to future epidemics and pandemics. Whatever new structures or mechanisms are established, they must promote equity and galvanize the engagement and they must be accountable and transparent.
Accountable and transparent. I feel like, John, I feel that this is our alliances with non-nation state organizations, the United Nations, World Health Organization, World Economic Forum, is undermining our own constitution, our own sovereign constitution. Is this legal for I asked this question of Catherine Kovalchuk, who will be guesting also on Thursday, the founder of Lawyers for Truth, which is a fellow Albertan of yours. I asked her this question: when leaders of the state, heads of states, come together in a think tank or in a international event, and then they sign treaties on behalf of all the ordinary Jane and Joe Canadians, without having to go through the parliamentary. Is that legal in your opinion, John?
So I have good news and bad news. The good news is that when a country signs an international treaty, the obligations of that treaty do not become legally binding on that country unless and until the country's own parliament passes laws to give effect to that treaty. So, a country can sign a treaty to ban nuclear weapons. They can sign a treaty to stop hunting seals or stop hunting whales, or whatever. Countries can sign treaties, but it does not become part of the law of the country until the parliament of that country specifically passes a law against nuclear weapons or against hunting for seals or hunting for whales or whatever the case might be. So I guess the good news is Canada can sign on to things, but it doesn't really become valid binding Canadian law unless and until you have the federal parliament or the provincial legislature that passes legislation to bring it into effect. So that's the good news. Now, the bad news is I think our current government is very much inclined to obey and to do whatever the World Health Organization wants. I've certainly seen this at the provincial level, where the chief medical officer says, well, we just follow the World Health Organization directives. They don't do any of their own thinking or research, and they just defer to this government body. And it's pretty scary. If we abdicate the responsibility of just thinking, then we're going to be in big trouble, because what we've seen the last 3 years, the government has promoted so many messages that are simply not true. I can't hear you at all. I cannot hear you. Can your guests hear you?
I'm sorry about that. I forgot to unmute myself. I'm sorry about that, John. So this last video I want to play because we have very limited time with you. I want to ask you all the questions I feel like ordinary James and Joe wants to ask you, being a constitutional lawyer. This person that I'm about to play is a former World Health Organization officer, and she is sort of like whistleblowing what is the next agenda for World Health Organization world domination. I know this is a little long, but I will only play half of it so that we can. This segment will preface us to the question of future lockdowns and what people can do if that happens again.
They're taking over the whole in what they call one world, one health, one government, and it is very interesting to see that it's only under one article. It is the WHO Constitution, Article 19, that they can adopt anything. And if lawyers can just focus on this, how come one Article 19 in a WHO Constitution that is illegitimate can change the whole world upside down? It's really my question. 2/3 in this article. In this article, I can read it, it's in front of me. WHO Constitution, Article 19, the Health Assembly, which meets in May this year.
I can't hear at all.
Easy.
So
in one.
you cannot hear?
It was adopted, and
all right. You're not able to hear, Mr.
Well, no. After I said I couldn't hear it, and then you turned on the volume, then I could. But prior to that,
okay. All right. Okay. Just a few more.
I heard her
seconds.
the first time that she spoke. I heard that, and then you played a second clip. I didn't hear that. So,
is it from this part here? Do you think? Did you hear?
Yeah.
This
If
part?
you want to hit play there, then yeah.
processes. And they have adopted the IHR already. The International Health Regulation was adopted under Article 19. We were teaching that. We did not understand how it was so easy. In one click of hand, it was adopted. And in the procedure that you see in the two documents, they say very clearly, if you don't agree, we have a compliance committee that they have in the International Health Regulation. And this is very nazi. You don't agree? Tell us why you don't agree, because we are going to work on this until everybody will have the same rights and right about everything. They have this sentence that McKinsey probably has carved, and this is very weird. So you imagine they have this in that, and in the other one, the countries, if they don't agree with the alert, real time, because now they're going to make it very quick. You have to say in 24 hours, if your country has a pandemic, it's impossible epidemiologically. It's impossible for Russia, for China to know if the whole country has a virus. It's clearly not possible.
All right. So she was saying that now all of the member states must disclose transparency. You have to agree, and if you don't, you have 24 hours to justify why you don't agree. I believe that Leslie Lewis has brought this to Parliament that we already signed on. May last year, I think, was the meeting of all the countries who will sign on a World Health Organization pandemic treaty. And she also brought up this Agile Nations treaty that was kind of hidden to the public. They sinisterly did this over the heavy lockdowns of 2020. The Liberal government has signed us up for this. If this is another future lockdown, there are many threats about lockdowns. This could be one of them, and there's also the environmental lockdowns. How do ordinary folks navigate if this ever happened in our country again? what are some of the basic rights that ordinary folks needs to understand about these events so that we can push back against these heavy mandates?
Well, it's important that Canadians understand with their minds and cherish in their hearts the rights and freedoms that are the pillars of the free society. That would include your freedom of expression to state using peaceful methods only. You cannot use a baseball bat to exercise your freedom of expression, but you, in a peaceful fashion, you can say whatever you want. You can express your opinions, your beliefs. Your freedom of conscience and religion, which is a right not only to go to a house of worship once a week and pray there or worship God, it's also a right to live out your conscientious beliefs in your life. So, for example, if you are an atheist or an agnostic, but you believe that it's wrong to kill an animal, then the state should allow you to live your life in a way that you're not required or forced to participate in the killing of animals. It is peaceful assembly. So when truckers go to Ottawa, that they can protest in the nation's capital without facing violence perpetrated by the government. It is freedom of association, so that you can have Christmas dinner with your mother or with your daughter without fearing a $2,000 ticket. It is the right to protest peacefully outdoors without fearing the heavy hand of the state that is going to throw you in jail or whatever the case might be. It is the right to bodily autonomy, so that you and I and everybody else, we decide what medical treatments, what vaccinations we're going to participate in or not. So it is mobility rights to travel freely within Canada, to enter Canada freely, leave Canada freely. Those mobility rights are protected by the Charter. So citizens, first of all, need to understand their rights and freedoms. And secondly, citizens need to be active in the democratic process and participate in the political process. So that means contact your federal MP, your provincial MPP, your MLA, whatever they call it provincially, but you have your federal, provincial, and your municipal city council representatives. And tell them that you want your charter rights and freedoms respected. Tell them that lockdowns are a mistake. And they were a mistake, and they're an unjustified violation of our charter rights and freedoms. And do not grow weary and do not give up, because when you give up and quit, that's when things get really bad.
I have one last question, and an audience member also has a question, and then we'll ask you to do a closing statement, John, because you've been very generous with your time, and thank you for guesting on our show. I'm looking forward to have you back on, because I think I only ask 10% of all the questions I want to ask you. But our listener David Carlson was asking, do higher courts recognize the supremacy of God and natural law? The preamble on the Charter of Rights and Freedom acknowledges the supremacy of God, but it seems like the supremacy of God is just by name only in this country. We had James Kitchen, one of the fierce human rights lawyer, civil rights lawyer as well, guested on the show last year, and he said, sometimes when I go to court, kind of paraphrasing this, when he was defending Pastor James Coate, he said that the judges seems to behave as if the charter doesn't exist. So it's one thing that we know our rights and freedom, but in practice, it seems like they can assault it with no holding back. So the question from David is, do the higher courts recognize the supremacy of God? What do you think?
Well, the opening words, the preamble to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it says, whereas Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. Now, the supremacy of God is something the courts try to stay away from. Although we do also have in the Charter, Section 1A, the very first freedom that is protected in the Charter is the freedom of conscience and religion. But in the preamble, the courts don't like to talk too much about the supremacy of God, but they do talk about the rule of law. The rule of law is the basic idea that we are not at the mercy, living under the tyranny of the whims of the king or the whims of the mob. So we are in fact ruled by laws, which means that the president, the prime minister, the king, what have you, cannot just wake up one morning and decide to throw you in jail because he doesn't like something that you said last week. You can only be put in jail if you violate a law and you've been properly, the steps have been properly taken, that you have been accused and you've had a right to counsel and you've not been detained and you have a right to a fair trial, et cetera, et cetera. So the rule of law is an important pillar of our society, and the courts have upheld the rule of law in many different court cases. The supremacy of God, not so much.
I brought that up. I think it's very important that we are talking about that, and we might not have enough time to kind of go deep. So that's why I'm going to invite you again, hopefully, Mr. Carpay, to come back on. Our friend in Saskatchewan, the Grizzly Patriot, Mr. Mark Friesen, read a document about 2 or 3 weeks ago that was put together by Salim Mansour and some. That is sort of like a proposal for amendment on the charter, on the Constitution. And what I understand, I might not be quoting him exactly what he was saying, but what I understand with his vlog that day when he was reading that document, an interpretation is in 1982 when Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the senior Trudeau, brought to be ratified the Charter of Rights and Freedom to the UK, to the Crown. The Crown then ratified and gave their maybe it's a royal assent. I don't know what it's called, but gave a seal of approval, sent Elliott Trudeau back, Pierre Elliott Trudeau back as a representative of the Crown, coming back to Canada, presenting now you have a Charter of Rights. Contrast that with the United States. The United States is the government of the people, by the people, for the people, and it is under. I feel like the rights and freedom of Americans are given, given by God, but the interpretation here with the charter that was being brought by from the Crown to Canada by Pierre Elliott Trudeau is now you have your rights given to you by the King or by the Crown. So if our basic human rights are given by royalty or the Crown, they have the right to take it back. So the supremacy of God, do you find that very important to emphasize that on our charter?
I do think it's important for Canadians, as well as Canadian lawyers, Canadian judges, to recognize that our rights do not come from government. As a human being created in the image of God, I have a right to speak and to live in accordance with my conscience, to associate or not associate with whom I please, to assemble peacefully, to exercise appropriate control over my own body, where I have the right to say yes or no to vaccines or medical treatments, my right to move, my right to travel. All of these are God-given rights. And if it's true that they come from government, well, then government can just take them away on a moment's notice. Now, there's always good debate about whether the American Constitution is better than the Canadian Constitution. Those are good discussions to have. But no matter how good your Constitution is, the best guarantor of rights and freedoms is where you have all the citizens in society, by the time they're 18 or even 17, 16, 15 years old, if all of the citizens understand that the free society with these rights and freedoms is better, is superior to a repressive regime, whether it's communist, fascist, national socialist, theocratic, if people really appreciate that the free society is better than repressive regime, that is the ultimate guarantor that people understand with their minds and cherish in their hearts what our rights and freedoms are. That's more important than the specific wording of the Constitution.
And with our experience, I hope that everybody wakes up now that in the last 3 years, not big corp, not even big pharma, not even billionaires or elites and technocrats who has assaulted our rights and freedom. It's usually the government is the biggest criminal in assaulting our rights and freedom. Thank you for your generous time. Please close us with your closing statement. Take a minute or two, Mr. Carpay. Leave us with, very useful advice, what people need to know moving forward. And thank you again for your time.
Okay. Well, it's a real honor to be on the show. I'll remind the viewers and the listeners that the Justice Center is funded exclusively by the voluntary donations from Canadians who support our work in defense of the free society. So if you would like to support our work, please do so. Go to www.JCCF, Justice Center Constitutional Freedoms, jccf.ca. You can donate online or by e-transfer or mail in a check. And we are a registered charity. We issue official tax receipts. So consider supporting us and support other groups and organizations as well that are fighting to reclaim the rights and freedoms that we've lost in the last 3 years. And I'm confident that if we are courageous and we speak truth to power, and if we practice the virtue of perseverance, and so if we don't give up and quit, but we keep on going, then we are going to win back all the rights and freedoms that we've lost. And I'm convinced that the victory is ours eventually, because truth always vanquishes the lie, justice always wins out over injustice, and freedom always wins out over tyranny. And we as Canadians, we understand that quitters never win and winners never quit. And we understand that it is better to die standing than to live on our knees. So thank you again for the support of people that are donating, the groups that are fighting for the free society, and thanks so much for having me on your show.
All right. So last words from Mr. Carpay. Quitters never win. Quitters never win and winners never quit. And the website is jccf.ca.
Yes.
jccf.ca. We need more. May I implore everybody to donate to jccf.ca. They are vanguards on our rights and freedom in Canada. Thank you, Mr. Carpay, for your generous time. Looking forward to have you back again. God bless you. God bless everyone. Don't go away. I'll be right back after these short messages. God bless, Mr. Carpay. See you again next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you again.
Imagine that the power grid was totally wiped by an EMP weapon of an enemy state. Your stress level will go to the roof, your patience will be tried, you will have to think about both your own and your complaining children's survival. If you don't survive, your children won't when they are left on their own. Teach your children how to have the mentality of being survivors through a fun, children-friendly guided outdoor adventures with basic survivor mindfulness integrated in the fun outing activity. Call my friends Ernell and Victoria who are experienced survivors. Call them at 905-252-8009 or email them at northernpacificcottages@gmail.com.
We have a brand new podcast in collaboration with one of our very important collaborators. So without much further ado, I would like to introduce our main collaborator for a brand new podcast, Enemies of the State, a New World Order. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Doru Gordon.
Yes, and to put it simply, the recipe is always there. Create a crisis. You have to present there is a crisis in society. In order for the state to go bigger and to grow, you always have to threaten people or to instill fear. You have to be fearful of greedy capitalists or the greedy businessman who wants to take money away from you.
Just because it's a seller's market, it does not mean that it's not a good time for you, the buyer, to get into your dream home. The seller's market presents a unique opportunity not available during the buyer's market. Find out for yourself. Get the professional advice of an experienced, honest, Christian freedom-loving real estate professional. Call my friend, our sister in the fight for freedom, Madam Cheryl Severance of Century 21 at 905-646-2121 or check out her website at cheryl-severance-c21.ca.
Fund the truth. Fund the unacceptable fringe views of the Freedom Fighter radio broadcast. Go to patreon.com/OJTV Canada and also donate $3 per month and help us keep going and pushing back against the lies, the hate, and the fear-mongering of the legacy media. Patreon.com/OJTV Canada. Your $3 per month will help us set fire on the lies of the tyrants, the technocrats, and the internationalist social engineers. Patreon.com/OJTV Canada.
Did you hear about the children's cough syrup shelf? They are mostly empty in the drugstores. Are you concerned? Do you feel the need to stockpile? As the world heads towards uncertainty, with every nation meeting its own challenges, Larks Medical are staged and ready to respond. Go to larksmedical.com. Provide them with your name, phone number, and email, and Larks will respond at their earliest possible availability to find solutions and ensure ample supply for your needs. Or email them directly at info@larksmedical.com. That's info@larksmedical.com.
I'm Pastor Arthur from Calgary, the leader of the Independence Party of Alberta. You are listening to the Freedom Fighter Radio Worldwide podcast, only here on the Ordinary Joe Show.
Immediately out! Immediately go and don't come back.
The honourable member for Haldeman Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, May 22nd to May 28th, representatives from 194 countries will meet in Geneva at the World Health Assembly to discuss the WHO Global Pandemic Treaty and to vote on amendments to the international health regulations. Why didn't this Prime Minister establish a public health inquiry into our COVID response before considering signing amendments to the international health regulations?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as an active member of the WHO, Canada has always been there to push for better science, to push for better impacts in the way we collaborate around the world. Canada is a leading voice on ensuring not only that we make it through this pandemic, which is continuing to be ongoing, but also that we prepare for future pandemics, which unfortunately may well be the reality for decades and generations to come. We will continue to be active, strong participants in international fora around health, while always respecting and protecting Canada's sovereignty and choices to make the right decisions for its own citizens.
It's Freedom Fighter Radio Tuesday night on a warm, it's not really that warm, but it's not as cold Tuesday night in Ontario. Coming to you live from the heart of the Great White North, the heart of the true North, strong and free. In Canada, we have all kinds of rights and freedoms being assaulted, not by terrorists, not by organized crime, but by our own government. Government has been the biggest criminal. There were so many questions I would like to ask Mr. John Carpay. 1 hour goes by like this. To have that long form conversation, I think we should try and do a Joe Rogan style 3 hour, 4 hour chat to really get into the nitty gritty of this stuff. I have so many more questions. One of the questions I was wanting to ask, if there was enough time, is what if people decide, all of Canadians decide that we all just come together and start a referendum? Is it legal? Is it lawful to do that? Have a referendum and say and tell our government, Mr. Government, whoever is the ruling party, we, the people of Canada, have decided that we want to remove ourselves from the entanglement of the World Health Organization, the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, the Club of Rome, the Trilateral Commission, the North American Free Trade Agreement, the NORAD, and all of these internationalist organizations that are, imposing their unelected bureaucrats' dogma into our citizens? Those are some of the questions, but 1 hour is really quick. And of course, we have to pay tribute to all of our um, paying advertisers. We need to give way to our ad spots so that we can continue on fund uh, this program, this podcast. But the way we can lessen the ads on our show is if our listening members of the Freedom Fighter Radio step up and kick in your love stars and love for your fund for freedom or your fund for the truth. If we become more of a listener funded, viewers funded production, then we can limit the ads as much as possible. However, it's not so bad. Our ads, all of our the businesses that we promote here on the show are all owned by freedom fighters. These are all members of the freedom community. So I have more questions, but our brother David has another question here. Sorry, David, I didn't see this before I said goodbye to Mr. Carpay. Is Mr. Carpay familiar with Mr. Pascal Najadi's litigation in Switzerland? Lawsuit crimes against humanity. He has formerly charged the Swiss health minister. You were also asking if that is Astrid Stuckelberger. Yes, she was Astrid Stuckelberger that we played earlier. It was a 3-minute video, and I know that I have very limited time with Mr. Carpay, so I only play half of it. So you know what? Since you brought that up, let me bring the rest of that video. Let me share screen here and play the rest of that video for all of our listeners.
Adoption of such conventions or agreements, which shall come into force for each member when accepted by it in accordance with its constitutional processes. And they have adopted the IHR already. The International Health Regulation was adopted under Article 19. We were teaching that. We did not understand how it was so easy. In one click of hand, it was adopted. And in the procedure that you see in the two documents, they say very clearly, if you don't agree, we have a compliance committee that they have in the International Health Regulation. And this is very nazi. You don't agree? Tell us why you don't agree, because we are going to work on this until everybody will have the same rights and be right about everything. They have this sentence that McKinsey probably has carved. This is very weird. So you imagine they have this in that, and in the other one, the countries, if they don't agree with alert real time, because now they're going to make it very quick. You have to say in 24 hours, if your country has a pandemic, it's impossible epidemiologically. It's impossible for Russia, for China to know if the whole country has a virus. It's clearly not possible. But they have to say in 24 hours to WHO, and WHO takes the command. They offer obligatory help, direct advice to the country, and if they don't agree, and if they deny the offer, well, they have to by written give the reasons why exactly, and it will be shame on you because everybody will know. It will be distributed to everybody. Communist Party, the bad side of total transparency. You see how they changed the word? Total transparency. You made a mistake. Everybody's going to see blame, and we're going to take you down to earth because we are going to finance you or not, because they are in charge of the financing too.
See, the coercion goes all around. If we are experiencing coercion from our own local government, the municipal, the provincial, the federal government, is that because there is a central bully? These are the internationalist organizations such as the WEF, the WHO, the 3-letter acronyms. That's very, very coercive. They have this rule they call transparency. If you don't comply, you have to explain within 24 hours why you're not complying. And they're talking to countries, nation states. The World Health Organization will coerce heads of states to comply. And if they don't comply, you have to give an explanation within 24 hours. And there's no privacy. It is full transparency. They are going to vilify and badmouth the way, everybody was saying Russia is a demon. Putin is a demon. If you don't comply, you will become like Putin. If you're the president of the United States, or you're prime minister of Canada, or you're the prime minister of Australia, and you don't comply, or let's say if you're a president of a small country like the Philippines or Taiwan, if you don't comply, we are going to vilify you on the world stage. So this is the culture that is happening internationally. Are you still surprised that there is that same culture in our in all levels of authority? Bosses at your workplace, our municipal mayors, our premiers in our provinces, and prime ministers that are all puppets and mouthpieces for these elite technocrats, billionaire internationalists. I notice that every time we have somebody very important coming on the show, we are heavy shadow banned. I get more traction when I'm doing solo monologues than when we have special guest coming on. So on Thursday, we have Catherine Kowalchuk. She is running for MLA in her riding in Calgary. And then on Sunday is our next roundtable. We have very interesting personalities who will be joining us on the Coast to Coast Freedom Roundtable on Sunday. Some of you probably have heard of Glenn Joyal. He is a mathematician. He had been guested on Mike Adams on InfoWars twice already to talk about his mathematical concepts that debunks, the theory of Einstein's theory of relativity, and actually, even though he doesn't claim to be faithful or a believer, and he doesn't want to be called a believer, all of his theories support the creation doctrine, the biblical creation story. So it's going to be interesting to have him on. We have Kristen Nagel, the founder of Frontline Nurses, for the roundtable. We have Marty up north will be joining us again. He started the hashtag Trudeau Must Go. Of course, Doro Gordon, our in-house panelist, who is also very bold in sharing all that he knows about history and how it relates and how it is connected to our faith. And we have, who am I missing? So we have Doru, we have Catherine Kowalchuk also will be, sorry, no, not Catherine. Catherine has already joined us. I'm forgetting somebody, folks. Forgive me if I forgot your name. So we have Glenn Joyal. We have Dr. Ann Gillis also will be coming. The theme for Sunday, the title of the roundtable discussion on Sunday is "This is a War on Our Children." Dr. Ann Gillis wrote 4 books regarding, child abuse and child trafficking and all that, the woke agenda, gender dysphoria, and all of that that's happening in our schools. Very related to what we talk about here with president, founder of JCCF, John Carpay today. So we have powerful panels of panelists on Sunday. So Glenn Joyal, Dr. Ann Gillis, Frontline Nurses founder Kristen Nagel will join us, and she also just have a newborn. She gave birth to a newborn about 2 weeks ago. We'll have Dora Gordon. We have Marty up north, and I'm forgetting one. I'm forgetting one person. I feel sorry. You know what? I don't want to forget anybody, so I'm gonna go. Oh yeah, Stephen DeBaugh. Stephen DeBaugh, one of the founders of Firefighters for Truth, will join us to weigh in on this topic because our firefighters are some of our local heroes as well. David was saying referendums are possible. No to the WHO. No to the WEF. No to NATO. No to NORAD. no to Club of Rome, no to Atlantic Council, etc. You nailed it, Joe. Excellent work. Thank you for the vote of confidence, my brother, from another mother. And this is a fun episode. I don't know why, really, the technocrats, the algorithmic technocrats of this social media, I couldn't cut away
They're
from.
taking over.
Oh, sorry.
The whole in.
I accidentally pressed things, and it makes a lot of. There's a lot of video that's open right now on cue. So we gotta share. I'm counting on Rumble. I was gonna cut away from our social media, from Twitter, from especially YouTube. YouTube already deleted one of my accounts. Maybe I will delete this video on YouTube. We don't even have followers on YouTube. I only put YouTube here as a recording device so that I can download from YouTube and edit the video. We are on cross posts. Finally, I was able to do it in one of the break times. I'm multitasking here, folks. It's not easy. But I only scratched the surface. I only ask 4 of the 20 questions that I want to discuss with Mr. Carpay. Maybe in the future, what I'll be trying to do is maybe bring in a panel of all just lawyers and have a debate on constitutional reforms. A referendum might be a good idea. I would like the constitutional lawyers to weigh in on that. One of the constitutional lawyers who works with Tanya Gaw from British Columbia, I forgot his name. What's his name, David? It would be awesome to have him on as well, and maybe Ezra Levant. He's not an active practicing lawyer, but they have a network of lawyers that are defending many of the pastors. One of the things I thought Mr. Carpay was not very aware in Calgary, they Pastor Art and friends created this big, not a banner, but what do you call it? A big billboard on the highway somewhere in Calgary, Alberta, and it says, Canada has arrested more pastors in Canada in the last 2 years than China, and so he was not aware about that, but I think that is factual. So it would be awesome. And I forgot to ask him, who are the pastors that the JCCF are defending in these atrocities that we are experiencing in Canada. So, folks, tune in on Thursday. I'd like to do my own monologues and my own for fun Cafe Freedom shows in the morning. I enjoy doing that, but I'm always crunched for time. That's because I'm trying to catch up. Easter is coming around the corner. I was contracted by the Conservative Party of Canada to post the greetings of Pierre Poilievre. So if it's a greeting for Christmas and Easter, I will take that contract. But you and I know we are not big fans of because of Pierre Poilievre's throwing Christine Anderson under the bus. That kind of really sour our relationship with the Conservative Party. I hope that they realize what they're doing. They're actually shooting themselves in the foot. Many of the fundraisers and the avid supporters of the Conservative Party of Canada are members of the Freedom Community. We might have an opportunity to bring on Melissa Landsman. I didn't know that she is now the deputy prime or the deputy leader. So if anything happened to Pierre and he resigns, the new leader will be the what do you call that again? Before they have an election, you will have the deputy leader would step up and be the leader before an election can be done. So Melissa Landsman is the deputy leader, and we interviewed her twice on the show before she became an MP. So yeah, I'm neither am I, David. And I think, I wish that there's gonna be the way we're doing it in provincial elections, such as the Independence Party of Alberta with Pastor Art's leadership and the leadership of Derek Sloan here in Ontario for the Ontario Party. How I wish we have something federally like that, but in effect, I guess the PPC, right? The PPC under Maxime Bernier is effectively an independent party outside of the uniparties, the establishment parties. I guess the only problem with the PPC is the strategic electioneering is kind of missing. There's passion, there's cause, there is a lot of support. I really believe that there was a purple wave last election, and there is great support from the freedom community, but a little bit less on electioneering strategy. So even Maxime Bernier didn't get a seat even in his own riding. I think when you're trying to, I believe that a party would have who have 3 seats. I had a phone conversation with Pastor Art last week. Oh, Pastor Art's coming back on April 4th. Anyways, folks, but Pastor Art was saying that in Alberta, if he can get at least 3 seats in the Alberta legislature, that the Alberta Independent Party can form a caucus. I think it's the same for federally. If the PPC can only be a little bit more strategic, and the passion is important, the passion, the drive, the meaningfulness of why PPC supporters are running. Those are very important causes, but there needs to be a little bit of electioneering strategy so that you can at least secure 1, 2, or 3 seats in parliament for an independent party allows you to create a caucus. So, all right. Some of this question we ask John Carpay. Maybe we can recycle some of the questions since we have an hour and a half. Hopefully, usually Catherine Kowalchuk doesn't really rush off, and hopefully she has enough time for us, an hour and a half or at least an hour. On Thursday, she will be our special guest for Freedom Fighter Radio Thursday night. You have to mark that calendar, and you have to invite people to tune in, because with Catherine, I had her on many times. I'm very comfortable having conversations with Catherine. Mr. John Carpay is a new friend, or a new. I only had him on the third time, but I already had Catherine Kowalchuk many times here on the show, so I'm very comfortable with Catherine. I can ask her any question, and I won't be on a rush. So Sunday is the Freedom Roundtable. Tuesday next week will be Pastor Art Pavlovsky. Thursday next week will be Reynold and Kathy Maines, the firstborn son of David Maines. If you are a believer, brother in the faith as much as brother in the fight, and a very iconic legacy. I don't know how to describe it, but pioneer of television in Canada is Crossroads Ministry, and many of you know 100 Huntley Street. That is something that I shared with my dad when he was alive, and when he comes and visit me in Canada. Every time he's here in Canada, something that we share together is watching 100 Huntley Street for breakfast. And the pioneer of Christian television in Canada is David Maines. Actually, the pioneer of television in general was Christian television in Canada. And his firstborn son, Reynold, and his wife Kathy Maines will be joining us here on the show on April 6th. It will be pre-recorded because they are based in Uganda, Africa, So I will be pre-recording that, and then we are going to air it on the 6th, just before the Easter weekend. After the Easter weekend, on the 11th, Tuesday, we're going to have Nikki Ballou back. He was the co-author of the book, The Great American Protest book. He co-wrote it with the biggest radio host of Nevada. What's his name again? I forgot the radio host, but he's most popular. He also has a channel on InfoWars. We will have him on the 11th. On the 12th, the next day after Nikki Ballou, we are going to have Glenn Joyal, a mathematician and a member of the Freedom Community. And on the 13th, Thursday, we'll have a fun episode with Boom Truck Ben. Do you guys know who's Boom Truck Ben? He is one of those truckers who brought a boom truck, where they hang the big flag. And during the inquiry, I don't know if you remember, one of the government shills were saying, they brought a wrecking ball. So a meme started going around with Miley Cyrus being part of the Freedom Convoy last year, because they were accusing Boom Truck Ben for bringing a wrecking ball. There was no wrecking ball. There was a flag hanging on that big boom. Chris Harrigan, a Freedom documentary filmmaker, will be joining us on the 18th. And then, well, after the 18th of April, we have a number of very interesting prospects. So, folks, you need to support Freedom Fighter Radio more than ever, because some of the possible big names that we are going to guest here on the show, Dr. Kerry Maday, maybe Peter McCullough, maybe, we don't know yet, but just a little teaser. Folks, thank you for joining us on the Freedom Fighter Radio. I'm your host, Ordinary Joe. It's 7:12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, coming to you live from the heart of the Great White North, from Midtown, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Thank you for joining us. Please share, and send the link on our Rumble to all of your friends on Telegram, on Messenger, or even, in China. What they do is so that the algorithms cannot trace them, they have been passing videos around with the airdrop. Thus, the reason that what's his name, CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, has disabled airdrop in China. Can you believe that? Those are the behaviors of the tyrants, the technocrats that are trying to overlord us. But we are going to thrive. God bless you all. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you again next time. Share. You might see me in the morning for Cafe Freedom if I can muster up some energy and time and chip away from all the workloads. Hopefully I can do that. God bless you all. Thank you for tuning in. Share. Send us some stars. Send us some love. I'm your host, Ordinary Joe. You've been watching Freedom Fighter Radio Canada, coast to coast. God bless you all. See you again next time. Bye-bye.
Freedom Fighter Radio, what is up? Whoa!
Shout out to Freedom Fighter Radio. And Joe, you're doing great work, brother, and I love it. All right? Always.
Make sure you listen to the Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Show.
I'm on Freedom Fighter Radio on the Ordinary Joe Show. That's quite a mouthful.
Yes. Hey guys, this is Chris Guy. Listen to Freedom Fighter Radio. They're here today, back in the blue, and so am I.
Please consider supporting the OJTV production costs and be an insider member for only $3 a month. Go to patreon.com/OJTV Canada. Thank you for your continued support.
Canadians all across the country are sick and tired of the lies, the fear-mongering, and the hate speech they hear from the mainstream media. Download the free radio app, Freedom Fighter Radio. Click the link below, scan our QR code, join our mailing list, and get a free download of our Freedom Fighter Radio app only here on OJTV on The Ordinary Joe Show.
The honourable member for Haldeman Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, May 22nd to May 28th, representatives from 194 countries will meet in Geneva at the World Health Assembly to discuss the WHO Global Pandemic Treaty and to vote on amendments to the international health regulations. Why didn't this Prime Minister establish a public health inquiry into our COVID response before considering signing amendments to the international health regulations?